Hi, I'm Josh Kaiser. I'm the head of school at Good Shepherd Montessori School, located in South Bend, Indiana. We are a school serving ages 3 to the 8th grade, and our mission here is to nurture the character and uniqueness of each child and to provide a holistic education for each child. We think it's so important to care for not only the intellectual part of each child, but the physical, the emotional, and the spiritual as well. And one of our signature programs here at Good Shepherd is our land-based learning program. We think it's so important to have students not just inside in the indoor learning environments, but outside in their outdoor learning environments as well. We have children at all ages out on our property and in local farms, learning about biomes, learning to appreciate the beauty of nature, learning about principles of permaculture design. It's a wonderful program we have. We've tried to develop a whole systems approach which uses agricultural education to teach students about sustainability. And we've done it in such a way that it is replicable. It serves as a model for other schools, other teachers who might want to do something similar. And we're so excited about opportunities we have to offer training to those who aren't part of Good Shepherd. And this virtual conference, which we're really excited about, is one of those opportunities for you to get just a taste of what we do here at Good Shepherd and how you might take that and apply it to your own situation as a small farmer, as an educator, in whatever context you might find yourself. Now, the person behind this program, the lifeblood of this program, is Theri Niemier. Theri has been working for over 25 years in our community as an educator and as a farmer. She has passion, she has energy, and she is very passionate about bringing the classroom out onto the farm and bringing the farm into the classroom and teaching us about what that means within an educational model. Theri right now is at Good Shepherd Montessori School, our farm manager and our regenerative agricultural specialist. Every time I listen to Theri, every time I've talked with her, I'm always learning something. She's full of energy, full of ideas, and I'm very excited that she is offering one of our keynote addresses as part of this conference. So you're sure to learn something from Theri, and I hope you're inspired to take some of what she says to think about how that might apply in your situation, how you might impact lives through land-based learning, through agricultural education. And so I welcome Theri to come and to speak to us.
Thank you, Dr. Kaiser, for the great, warm introduction. The background looks so pretty there. That's our farm at Good Shepherd Montessori School. And again, welcome and thanks for joining. I am so excited to share my passion with you. I am going to turn off my picture and I'll pick up towards the end just because it blocks some of the PowerPoint we're going to go through right now. So again, welcome and thanks. I'm excited to be with you today on this video conference, which I hope you're able to check out all the different presenters. There's just some great sharing through it all to hopefully inspire you in farm and school partnerships. I'm kind of dividing my time around 3 areas: a little bit about my history, what brought me to be so passionate about farm and school partnerships, also about why farm and school partnerships are so incredibly important in this day and age, and some data that's come out to support that, and then just some lessons that I've learned through the years. People ask me, which came first, teaching or farming? Teachers are wondering how hard it would be to convert. Farmers are wondering how hard it would be to teach. Well, I don't think it really matters. I think they're both just so beautifully paired together. But I was in the classroom first. I was teaching in a local grade school when I first was introduced to this concept of organic farming. It was in the late 80s. My dad had just been diagnosed with a terminal illness, and he chose what was then a very unconventional healing method that involved a lot of fresh vegetable, primarily juicing. And he had to order all of this because at the time there wasn't any organic outlets. So a lot of it was coming from California. And of course, juicing takes nutrients right to your bloodstream. So it made perfect sense that you wouldn't want pesticides going into those nutrient dense drinks. But anyway, I started right then thinking, oh my gosh, I need to read up on this. I need to learn more about food and health. And I discovered 2 big things. It's not just about what you eat, but equally important is how it's grown. As a response to what I was learning about food production and health, I started to garden at my own home, and I was growing a lot of fruits and vegetables. And fast forward a number of years, I decided I wanted to grow all my own food, including my fruits, my vegetables, and meat. I was going to be a meat eater. I wanted to know exactly, what was going on, what my animals were eating, and therefore I was eating. I was raising my young kids then, and I realized food is preventative medicine, and I need to be more involved. So I started with large gardens and realized I really loved working in the soil. Just gave so much back to me, and growing food was just so rewarding. So in 1996, my husband and I purchased a 10-acre farm, and I was starting out with the idea that I was going to grow all my family's fruit, vegetables, and meat. So all of the food that I could. So this was really the beginning of my agricultural journey. I actually started planting right away that March. I brought my class out. I was, like I said, teaching, and I brought my class out before we even moved into the farm. I thought, well, they won't be able to hurt anything in the house this way. And that initial trip out to the farm was so eye-opening for me. I realized that children didn't know where their food came from. I had already started a garden, so I had some fruits and vegetables that were mature enough to harvest and eat. And there was just so much excitement around that. So I noticed a few really big things. The farm environment is just so engaging, not only to the children, but their parents were equally as engaged. And the kids didn't know where their food was coming from, what it looked like in the fields, how to harvest it, and neither did their parents. So I got started right away. That first summer, I had a couple weeks of farm camp with a half dozen kids in each group. And then in the fall, my neighbor had a number of acres he grew pumpkins in, and he left so many of them. They weren't perfect as he needed. So I talked him into selling the use of that patch. And I had a pumpkin patch in the fall, and we probably had a couple hundred families or a couple hundred people come in, pick their own pumpkins, go for hay rides, and just really enjoy being in a real farm setting. Well, these two programs were the beginning of what became my life's work, which is year-round education for all ages. Over the next 25 years, my farming, the programming I started and got engaged in, and my own knowledge grew and changed. I started by working with youth in farm camps and families, and then I find myself working with all ages. In 2007, Bertrand Farm became a nonprofit educational farm. I was still very active in food production, that is, feeding my local community, mostly through our CSA program, community-sponsored agriculture. The farm was growing and changing as I learned more and became a better, more efficient farmer and earth steward at the same time. As I learned more about the connection between agriculture and the environment and environmental health, my farming methods started including more perennial production, those plants that come back every year, and conservation practices, really thinking about water capture and how the future of farming will look without the use of groundwater. So in 2013, I was able to undergo a redesign using a lot of these principles I had been learning about and practicing with. I call it regenerative agriculture. And these designs were based on some of the permaculture philosophy that I had been studying. Around 2017, I began to formulate a plan to move to the city full-time in an attempt to create greater access to farm and sustainability education for all ages and backgrounds. Good Shepherd Montessori School and I had been working together since they began in 2002. They were bringing students to my farm weekly as part of their integrated curriculum. I presented this idea to them to install a working urban farm on their school landscape because it had, a couple acres of green space that was available, only primarily being used for grass at the time. We met up, our missions really overlapped in the area of earth stewardship. And yeah, we became just a great partnership. And so I packed up my programs and I moved to the city in 2019. I've been working full time on this landscape since then, specializing in regenerative agriculture and helping consumers learn as much as beginner farmers about our relationship to each other and to the environment. I think with a better understanding of that, it all comes together more quickly. It's about health. It's not just beginner farmers who need to learn better stewardship practices in our agriculture, but it's the consumer who needs to seek out those farmers and support the movement in that way. We cannot live independently of each other or independently of the environment. We are a package of sorts. So together, we can create a better food system and a future of secure food, which includes health for us and health for the environment. Food systems include, different areas: production, processing, distribution, consumption. All of these areas are important and necessary for a thriving food system. And so including, some education in all these areas is important. And there are many different ways to create farm and school programs. I've worked and consulted with many different scales and models. I've hosted on my rural landscape single field trips and year-long programs. I've taken farming classes to school classrooms. And, now I find myself here at Good Shepherd Montessori developing an urban educational farm, not just for our students, but also for the greater community, and including being a proof of concept model for small farmers and other schools interested in this work, sharing kind of our good and bad, our successes and our failures in the hopes of being a great resource. I found great success in many of these different scales. I've even consulted with schools who have absolutely no green space. Where there's a will, there's a way. And I believe the time is now to find a way for all schools. And hopefully this conference is a support system for that, and that in coming together and encouraging more farmers and schools to partnership, we can really address the insecurities of our current food system at the same time. From the beginning of my farming and teaching experiences, that first field trip, I knew that this was a match, a successful match, teaching and farming. All subjects, like I said, can be included. And I have witnessed the successes over and over again. But what I'm really excited about right now is that there are lots of studies and data collection that have been published recently to confirm and support this, and hopefully inspire and encourage all of you to take a leap of faith and to get started. If nothing else, it's becoming clear that farm and school programs make school more fun and exciting. Studies are showing that this encourages learning and academic achievement across the board, not just on the landscape, but in the sciences, math. Farm and school provide exposure to farming as a career to students who might not otherwise ever have that exposure. And this is a major concern for the future of food security, with less than 2% of our population currently having farming in their families. It's been my experience that children who learn differently, especially ADHD students, thrive in farm and school programs. It gives them physical outlet, and I feel like they take that success, and they take it to the classroom as well. And that can be the difference between, loving school and not loving school. And I really find that students of all ages lack the understanding of the satisfaction that hard work can give you. And I think farm and school can really be successful in that area as well. This is a great study that just shows how education and support for small farmers can come together in food choices. This is a study that was done with elementary students, and it involved three study groups. One group got an education on the nutrition of these foods that were being presented to them for food choices for lunch. And that education included some understanding or sharing of the fact that these things grow locally, and maybe even talking about the farmer who grew them. But they used nice, colorful educational tools and charts to talk about the nutrition as well. The second group used beautiful, colorful educational charts, including kind of that food plate image where half of it's fruit and vegetables. And so they got a great nutritional lesson before they were presented with these same fruits and vegetables. And the control group, the last group, didn't get the education at all, but was just simply presented with the choices. And in all areas, the kids who got the most information with the local understanding, were more inclined to taste and eat these different fruits and vegetables. So imagine if these same kids would have met the farmer or visited the farm or grew it themselves, harvested it, were engaged in any part of the cooking of it, what might have happened. Studies are clear. Farm and school supports health and small farmers, encouraging the consumption of local foods. Part of sustainability is to know what our local and seasonal foods include. And in the lunchroom, well, there's no better place than these lessons in the lunchroom. I've also found animals add great quality to any farm and school program. It's not always practical for everyone, but if it is and can work for you, and certainly different animals to choose from. I don't know what it is about goats, but goats seem to be like a huge draw for all ages, adults all the way down to the youngest children. But there are so many options. We have rabbits, we have bees. We consider our permaculture, which is our worm farming, a livestock as well. But a great study to support diversity on the farm, including animals, shows kind of attitudes towards a farming program before and after. And these are parents reporting in a percentage type, a percentage style on the attitudes that they perceived their children to have before they began their farm and school program, and then again after. And the animals and the gardening, including composting elements, were looked at individually. And in all areas, those positive attitudes went up after the farm to school program. And not only just went up for the kids, but also went up for the parents because of going up for the kids. Kids have a huge potential to take these lessons home, which I think is awesome as well. Well, it's obvious in my work that the more engaging the program is, the more successful, the more learning, the more success on any level. And data is showing this. This is a study that was done as well, showing that the more engagement with the cafeteria, seeing the whole process, seed to plate is huge. Having outdoor classrooms, being engaged in any part of bringing that food to the lunchroom adds greater success to the learning and the love for better food and farming itself, actually. It's clear that schools, teachers, students, and families all benefit from a well-developed farm and school program, but it is equally important and doable that the small farmer benefits also. Land access is one of the biggest barriers for new and beginning farmers. Not all schools, but most have significant landscapes that are currently being wasted if simply covered in grass and pesticide use. Schools can help grow our small farmer population while benefiting from the resources they provide. In the best case scenario, which is not realistic for all schools and totally understandable, that a school with significant land can simply engage a small farmer and allow that farmer to farm. And even if that's all they do, that is, I think, a valuable component of the education that will arise from just the viewing of that cyclical cycle of food production. But then, there's a whole spectrum to the ideal of including the farmer and the teachers together in creating a cross-curriculum experience. Wherever you can fall into that line, there is value. Farm and school programs that teach with a holistic approach like this to health and environmental awareness are creating greater support systems for farmers, which of course are our food source now and in the future. And, again, a reminder that many of our farmers are approaching retirement age, and we need to expose kids for the future of food security to farming as a viable career and occupation. There are so many benefits to our community and our economy of farm and school programs, and I'm guessing that a lot of these facts already, and that's why you're here. Not all farm programs are going to reach out to the greater community with educational programs like we do, but certainly any farming program will affect your school community, your teachers, your students, and hopefully their families. Over the years, I have seen and heard from young adults the impact of just one farm field trip made on them, and somehow brought them back and engaged them in agriculture. I am currently finishing a publication I'm calling Food Farming and Sustainability, a curriculum guide for home, school, and small farms. It'll be coming out hopefully after the first of the year. And in it, I am bringing together my experiences and a lot of the practical side of teaching these things, which I find to be ageless, quite honestly. A lot of the activities that our classes or I engage in with my students are ageless. My college students are as excited about setting up a worm farm as my first year students. Digging up potatoes is as joyful for mom and dad on CSA morning as it is for their children. Harvesting, processing, and making grape jelly for microeconomy or just to take home makes proud peacocks out of all ages. So take into consideration in your thinking and your design of your farm to school program, your teaching schedule, your resources, which of course is super important, and your growing season. And what I put together here are some of the elements I'm including because they provide so much engagement for students in our traditional school year from August to June. I'm choosing lots of perennials because they're so important to cleaning the air and water. And they provide so many lessons on delicious farm fresh food, annuals as well. And then, of course, animals. Just as an example, when I'm choosing an apple, I'm thinking about my season and when my students will be there. I'm choosing late harvesting apples because I want my students to be in class or I want their school session to be in when these are mature so that they can be involved they'll be involved in planting them in the spring and then, several years later and every year after that, harvesting them in the fall. I'm also choosing dwarf varieties so that I don't have to work with safety elements like ladders. And I'm working with junior high on this harvesting. So a dwarf apple tree is perfect and they're able to really get around the whole thing and harvest for themselves. So creating as much independent work for them as possible. I put goats on my animal list too, and it's not because I share the sentiment that they are so lovable like so many people do, but because they keep the hawks and predators away from the chickens. I've been able to get away with this on my urban site. Not everyone would be able to. We do have a 6-acre landscape, even though our production is definitely not 6 acres. But finding companions that are going to make your system work more smoothly. So I think I'm going to close here, other than I want to share some pictures with you and say that I can't say enough good things about farm and school programs. I've seen them from the very smallest to very productive, large, and they all have so many great elements, both for farmer and students. I think engaging our students in nature and just learning that whole relationship thing is such a big part of the farm and school experience, and goes a long way to helping our students become great earth stewards, and great consumers, and some of them even regenerative farmers, hopefully, and all working together to create a more secure future for food. I say, just be like Nike and just do it. Find some support and resources, start out slow, and just get started. I wanted to just share some pictures that come from my work with kids on the farm. And I think it's just obvious how joy-filled and rewarding it is. I love to see older kids mentoring younger kids. It's just so great for their development. I love seeing students learn practical skills and also learn about deep sciences. There's such a spectrum of curriculum possibilities. And animals, they just add a quality element that I think will last a lifetime when it comes to humane treatment of animals and the raising of meat. There's so much joy in harvesting. Preserving food for the winter is just such great sustainability education. Learning how to cohabitate with all of nature's creatures is, another thing that the earlier we start, the better. Our young adults, volunteers, are learning great skills as well, and being engaged in food production and learning their role as more aware consumers. Everybody loves raspberries. It's a great one for the traditional school year in the Midwest. If you can add microeconomy, buying and selling is, I think, a great part of the junior high experience. And there's just so much to be learned about the business side of agriculture. And again, these are some of my older students, college students, who are making great jelly and are quite excited to take some home with them. I also want to include on this last slide just some data collection that is really starting to support these grant writing projects that most of us have to do when we're starting a farm to school program. So I just wanted to share some with you that I've used here and that I think are, can make some powerful statements and show that it's not a hypothesis anymore that farm and school make better education. It is studied, the data is collected, it's in, and it's in support. So use these in your own grant writing. And again, I want to thank you for tuning in to our video conference. I hope you have time to watch the other presenters as well. I want to give you a little lesson on another presentation on soil and the importance of good living soil, as well as give you a tour of our urban farm at Good Shepherd Montessori School. So stay with us and check out the rest of our conference. Thank you so much for coming.
So I know the important thing is just do it and get started, but let's say there's a school with like zero garden or farm infrastructure existing other than land. Mm-hmm. Do you have like a ideal time of year that, I don't know, getting things started? I mean, I guess you can do something different at every time in the year, but like, let's say there's kind of a totally clean slate. Do you have any advice?
Fall.
People don't realize it, but fall is the best time to start a garden. You're going to see through these different presentations some ways to do that. Sheet mulching is a big one, and it's a great recycling lesson. And it's a great time to learn about soil. But if you can set up a small spot even with sheet mulching in the fall, you can spend your entire winter learning about what you're going to do and get excitement going. And then you can do your seed starting at the beginning of the year and plant into it. And it's just a very natural progression. So fall is really the very best time. And you can create these great, pretty weed-free gardens if you do it correctly. So looking into sheet mulching and lasagna gardening are and you're going to see some of that in the presentation. So
For folks just getting started, where do you recommend they kind of focus most of their energy?
Well, I think, and I've said this in some of the other, you're going to hear this again in some of the other sessions, organization is huge. Organization is the difference between efficiency and inefficiency, and that can be on any scale. And I hope you catch that not only from my answer right now, but from the other sessions. Ben Hartman spends a good amount of time on that, because when we talk about waste, some of it is our own personal time and energy, and unorganized programs, they're not usually as successful, and part of that is because of the amount of waste.
If you had to choose one age group to focus on, just for scalability kind of, what age would you choose?
Well, just in my own experience, I find sixth graders to be just like the perfect age for a farm to school program. And, I think it's not real practical to think that a huge public school might be able to integrate a program like this in year 1 or even year 5. So one of the things I say to larger schools is choose one grade that everyone will go through and make it a more engaging experience for that one grade. And 6 years, they still are really keen on hard work, and they feel really satisfied by that. I just find that age group, if I had to pick one, I think that's what I would do for grade school for sure.
If you had to choose one book or movie that you recommend for people to get some inspiration or clarity, what would you recommend?
Oh gosh, that's a hard one because there are so many great things out there now. And, part of my putting down into a manuscript my work over the years includes a lot of that by theme, but and also highlights the influences that I've had in my own life. But if I had to choose just one easy to read book for all ages, it would be Michael Pollan's the young adult version. Make sure you note that, the young adult version of The Omnivore's Dilemma. This is just a great introduction to the environmental issues associated with where you buy your food and how it was grown. And it's just a quick read, it's enjoyable, and I use it from 6th grade to my oldest CSA members, people who want to learn more about the issues at hand.
So this farm specifically, what is a unique partnership? So Bertrand Farm was, my 10.5 acre farm. I merged with Good Shepherd, so I brought quite a load of resources with me, from tools to sheds to all kinds of equipment and irrigation drip line systems. So no, I would say no, that when anybody goes into business, you have to plan on losing money for a number of years, sometimes even. So we are fortunate enough that we probably have been, and that's the joy of partnering with a farmer, is to get that expertise and sharing of hopefully resources and knowledge that can shorten that curve if there even has to be one.
I would say that the majority of farm to school programs are not about profitability. If we look at the strict definition of profitability, that is income minus expenses. Depending on your scale, which is why I encourage people to start smaller, I think you can expect to, if profitability is your long-term goal, like the business side of farming, as it is in my situation, you want to start small and grow so that you can always have more income than expenses. But I think if you're going for a larger system and implementing that all at once, I would say that is creating the infrastructure. Building soil takes time. Putting infrastructure into place, especially if students are involved in it, which is the best way to do it, does take time. And like any business, you don't expect to make an income the first year.
What would you say has been like the biggest challenge systems in a program? Is it money, or is it people, teachers? Like where would you say would be the biggest challenge?
I think one of the biggest learning curves is bringing everyone on. And I think once they've engaged into, like, if all of our teachers here had to go through this conference, they would be changed. They would be transformed. They would understand. And where they might see chaos, they would see beauty. And that is a large learning curve for people. When we talk about restoration agriculture, it's not always, and for me, you know, I'm specialized in permaculture, which is using perennials in creating natural settings of food production. And to the untrained eye, that can look like chaos. But to the person who knows, you can't help but admire it.
And that's why starting small with just the people who are passionate about it, it rubs off, and the success also encourages others to get involved. And that kind of goes back to that study we looked at on the parents, the parents' attitudes towards farm to school programs before and then after it started, and how much they've changed, and all in a positive way. We can do that same thing with our staff and faculty. If you just have one teacher that's passionate and has the minimal amount of resources to get it started, it will grow.
So it seems like this is a growing area of research with how students are affected by having a farm program in their education. Are there any effects on students that you've noticed that you think maybe, at least studies you've seen, haven't quite addressed yet, or might be kind of hard to translate into scientific terms, that you've noticed in your years working with kids?
Well, I've been working with kids for close to 30 years now, and I don't know if we're measuring joy yet, but that is a huge one. And I think some of the other data collections that I showed you do offer some proven research on enjoying school in general more, which is huge in my mind. And I also think we're starting to collect the data from the alumni of these programs to show how they, how their choices, their long-term choices, just personal choices, are affected by this kind of exposure young and repetitively through the years, especially in a school like this that has a program that starts with the youngest and stays with them through 8th grade. of course, that's going to be a compounded influence. So I'm not sure that how much of that information is out there yet, because our school is 22 years old this year, and we have always had this program. So we have, we have young adults who are parents that have had these years of experience, and that's when we can start really looking at long-term results. But I think, again, that the research we've already talked about does address a lot of the things I've picked up on through the years. But yes, just the joy of nature, that's subjective. So I'm not sure how much research is out on that, but there might be.